this way?
Yeah. That's fine. So we are right now. The stream is live, and I'm over here.
You want that in your background?
Well, I have it as it's just a little.
No, I mean the picture.
Yeah. Oh, it's Howard Stern. Oh, of course.
Is that who that is?
Yeah, that's Howard
okay.
Stern.
I'm sorry. I thought it was a woman with no clothes
on. Well, we could theoretically. It could be anything. Could be anything.
Okay.
So we've got the stream here, and people, if you're joining us right now, you're seeing something that we normally would not have on the air, but this is live and direct. And I'm gonna lean back a little bit and go so we can get this. Let's see here. That's even better. Perfect. Okay. And let's get this going up here. And we're about to go live, like on the air live. So we'll go 1, 2. Let's see here. No, I don't want that. Okay. And we're doing it in 5, 4, 3, a 2, and a 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rich Lieberman Media Pulse. We are live here on YouTube. If you're watching us live, great. If you're watching at another time, it is Thursday, and I have a special guest, and that is very, very acclaimed national and local sports Bay Area broadcaster, Joe Starkey. It's a pleasure for you to be here.
Delighted to be here.
all warts and all getting here, which, whatever, we're here.
That's it.
That's the main thing. How are you, sir?
All's good. Yeah, I had a great road trip. I was invited to the Auburn game by Cal alumni group, and the Bears had a great win over a great program. Auburn sells out every game. Right. The whole atmosphere is college football at its finest. So it was a wonderful trip, and the Bears are a winner.
Yeah, I should have mentioned, but Joe, of course, Starkey is the well-known, retired a couple of years ago, play-by-play sports broadcaster for Cal and the 49ers, and way back, the California Golden Seals.
That was my first job back in the 70s.
Yeah, what was that like?
Yeah. Well, that almost was a shock in some ways, because at that point I was a banker. I was corporate vice president at Union Bank in San Francisco, and had a good job, doing well. But I had this thing in my head that said, I'd really like to take a run at broadcasting if I could. So for 2 or 3 years before getting that first job in 1972, I would go to ball games. First, when I worked at the bank in LA before they transferred me up north, I'd go to the Forum and tape Laker games and tape King games. And then when I came up here, I would tape Seals games.
You grew up in Southern California?
No, I'm a Chicagoan.
Chicago, that's right. You did. Yeah. Did you not do some work for DePaul?
No, I went to Loyola. I was there in their golden era of the 60s when they won national championships and things like that. But somewhere in the back of my mind, even though I was doing well in business, had an MBA and all that kind of thing, I just had the idea that, I'd really take a run at broadcasting. So I kept making tapes. And finally, I heard that the Seals were going to need a broadcaster because Roy Story, who had been doing the Seals, got the job with the LA Kings. And so when I knew the job was open, by a good coincidence, I had a business trip for the bank to Chicago. And so I made sure that I called Charlie Finley in his insurance office and said, I'd like to come upstairs to your office on Michigan Avenue and have you listen to my tape, because I know you need an announcer for the hockey. So he said, come on up. And I had this tape that I'd made just sitting in the stands at a hockey game. And he listened to the tape, and believe it or not, on the spot, he hired me.
Wow.
But that's not the rest of the story.
The rest of the story is
the rest of the story is that, again, pointing out that my MBA was in personnel and human resources and all that.
Right.
And Charlie Finley had a reputation for going through people at a huge rate.
Right.
And so I thought I was making a very nice appeal by saying, Mr. Finley, not only can I do your broadcast, I could probably help you in your hiring processes, because that's what I've been doing in the banking business. Because they said you've had such a huge turnover of people.
Right.
Well, he took that personal. He felt he was insulted by my saying that he couldn't hold on to people. So he fired me.
You're kidding me.
I had the job for 5 minutes, lost the job, walked out of there thinking, what the hell happened? What's just happened? But I'm happy to say that I was not deterred enough, because what I did is I came back to the Bay Area. And then I went to KEEN in San Jose.
Yeah.
In the 70s, they had the rights to the Seals broadcast and the Oakland A's, by the way. Yeah. So I went to their general manager and said I'd like to apply for the hockey job. This was early summer. And so I played him the tape. And he said, you know what? We'll give you a shot. We're going to let you do it. And I said, you need to know something, though.
Yes.
You need to know that Charlie Finley, I'd been to his office. He gave me the job, but then he fired me in about 5 minutes. So I said, you need to know that. He said, don't worry about that. I'll fix it. Well, I go quit the bank. And then I get a phone call from this guy named Len Smith. And he said, tell me again about your problem with Charlie. All right. So
I'm laughing because I know if you.
So the A's are now in the World Series in '72.
Right.
So Charlie Finley has Len Smith, who is the station manager of his station, up in his booth to watch the game with him. And he's got my tape with him. He said, Charlie, I want you to listen to the tape of this guy. And because this is who we want to hire for the Seals. And so somewhere around the third or fourth inning, after listening to the tape on and off between inning breaks, he stood up and said, please don't tell me you want to hire that son of a bitch banker.
He said that?
That's a quote, yes. And he said, yes, I do. He said, all right, go do it. Well, that started my career.
The rest is history. What did he pay you?
Oh, God, it was, I actually took a pay cut. Now, remember, we're talking almost 50 years ago.
All right, yeah.
At that time, I went from probably 14 or 15,000 as a bank vice president down to 12,000 working for the hockey team. And eventually that got solved as I moved up. But I did take a pay cut to go to.
You did take a little bit of a pay cut. And in the process, you came upon John Miller. Am I right, maybe? Or was that later on?
No, that, in fact.
It was the voice of the San Francisco
After my first
Giants.
year doing the Seals, which was the 72-73 season, they lost the broadcast rights. Keene said, we're not going to carry it. We can't get any ratings. We're not going to carry it all. So they literally had no radio outlet for the 73-74 season.
Surprise.
So I got lucky because at the end of my first year, 72-73, late in the season, we had a game in Pittsburgh against the Penguins. And as I was doing the game, a guy sat down pretty close to me near my broadcast table and listened to the game. When the game was over, I started to leave, and he said, I'd like to talk to you for a minute. He said, I'm Tad Potter. I own the Penguins. And he said, we're looking for an announcer for next year. Would you be interested in coming to Pittsburgh? And I said, sir, I appreciate it. But I said, I doubt it because I'm working for the Seals. And at that time, I did not know they were not going to be on the radio.
Right.
So a month later, though, we find out they lose their rights or the Keene won't carry them. So they have no outlet. I call them back up. If that job's still open, I'd love to have it.
Right.
He said, come on down. So he hires me to become the Pittsburgh Penguins radio guy. In the meantime, now I've got a home in Walnut Creek.
Right.
I've got 2 young children, my wife. And so what they're going to do, if I got to spend a year in Pittsburgh, they're not going to go to Pittsburgh. They're going to go back to our hometown of Chicago, live with her parents, with my 2 little boys, while I get through the year and see what's going to work out or not work out. So at that point, I know John Miller as just a young announcer from Santa Rosa. And he's looking for a job himself. And he's 22, 23 years old.
Right.
And he's out of work. And so we're talking about it one day. And I said, John, I said, well, I'll tell you what. I said, I have to go to Pittsburgh. I'm not going to sell my house because I don't know what's going to happen. If you want to move into my house for the winter, all you got to do is pay the utilities, no rent, to get you through this and wait till you get a break and get hired by somebody. So he does that. And then early spring of 74, he calls me and says, Joe, I got a break. He said, I'm going to go work for a team in Omaha, a minor league baseball team.
I thought you were going to say Oakland. Go ahead.
No.
Not yet.
Minor league baseball.
Coming.
This is in February.
That's right.
A week later, he calls me again and says, I don't believe this any more than you will, but I just got hired by Charlie Finley to do the Oakland A's baseball. And I said, oh, thank God. Well, good for you. So he's off and running. I'm sitting in Pittsburgh, but then the Seals are sold. Finley gets rid of them, and the new group that comes in calls me and says, would you like to come back to the Bay Area? And I said, hell yes, because I'm renting a house in Pittsburgh. I got a real home. And so I go back to the Bay Area, and I do the Seals for 2 more years until they really go out of business.
Yeah. Cleveland, they became.
Yes, that's
Cleveland Barons or something like that.
Cleveland Barons for a year or two, and that flopped.
Right.
Didn't make it.
Right. The question I have, though, is when you got to your new spot in the Bay Area, it was a home, right?
Yeah.
Were there termites?
Not in those days. There might be.
Yikes!
And there certainly aren't any now. Yikes!
Okay, well,
you can count on that. We take care of all termites.
I had
now.
to get that out of the way.
In fact, what's bizarre, since I've retired, I'd swear as many people ask me about termites as they do about my football background, for God's sake.
Yeah. You know what the termite said when he walked into the bar?
No.
Is the bartender?
Not bad.
Thank you. All right. Finally, he's laughing. He came in. I don't know what the hell was going on. I had to get that out of the way, too. So you got to know John Miller and John Miller, of course, is the play-by-play.
I'm delighted to see what happened to his career. He's got a great voice for baseball, and obviously he's a Hall of Famer. So happy ever after.
Do you? I mean, Finley. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He was on the cover, I believe, of Newsweek. He was on the Tonight Show. I mean, they were a magical team back then. They won 3 World Series. They had all the, the drama, Reggie Jackson, and the straw that stirs the drink. What was Finley like? You knew him pretty well, right?
Yeah, and I thought he was kind of a jerk.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
He had an incredibly small staff. I don't think he had more than 4 or 5 people working for him. All right. Carl Finley, his cousin, did almost everything in the organization. Mm-hmm. And it was sad because he did have these great products. The A's were a wonderful team, but he wasn't a wonderful guy. He fired people on a whim.
That's what I heard.
Tough man to work for, not a nice person. And obviously, eventually, it all came tumbling down when Vita Blue and Catfish and some of the others said, we need a raise. Right. And you could make the case that free agency in baseball was almost directly the result of Finley being such a cheapskate and not taking care of his players.
He was known as being cheapskate. He was tremendous, as you obviously know, very innovative. The white shoes, the baseball, of course the DH, and all that too. But that's what he was known as, a cheapskate.
Yeah, and it's too bad. Just not a nice person either. Just not a nice guy. All about himself. And obviously, he did know what he was doing in sports. He did a great job with the baseball team. Probably a little luck in there too. But on the other hand, it worked. And when he left the game, it was good for the game.
So what was it like doing hockey? Was that your number? I mean, I know you like football, obviously. You were a four-bearer to come to do Cal. I think your first year was 75, was it?
First year for Cal was 75. First year in the business was 72 with the hockey team.
Right.
And I grew up in Chicago where I played hockey. I mean, if you were a kid in Chicago in the winter, you went outdoors and played hockey outdoors because everything froze. So it wasn't that difficult for me to pick up. I knew the game. I mean, I was a big Blackhawk fan. The Blackhawks were a really good team in that era. And so I had no problem being ready to do a hockey game.
Did you like hockey more than you like football or no?
At that time, I would say that I loved the Chicago Bears. I was a huge Chicago Bears fan. I was a big Cub fan. I mean, I just liked all sports. At that age, Chicago had some pretty good teams. It was fun. Was it growing up in Chicago? Harry Carey, the great Harry Carey, and all that. How much of an before influence? Harry Carey. Oh, I know, but I'm saying, how much of an influence did he, or was that just something? Harry had no influence on me, but Jack Brickhouse had a huge influence. Jack Brickhouse was the voice of the Cubs during my youth and well into my 30s before he quit, and he was my mentor. When I was trying to get into the business, I had worked when I was working for the bank from LA. I was on a recruiting trip to Arizona because that was one of my key things, was bringing young men out of college, men and women, into Union Bank. And one time I was down there in spring training, and so the Cubs were playing, and I called. I found out where they were staying. Right. I called Jack Brickhouse in his hotel room. I said, Mr. Brickhouse, I work for Union Bank, but I'm a Chicagoan. I followed your career in the Cubs. I'd like to talk to you about broadcasting. He says, come on up. Wow. So he invited me up to his room. We spent some time talking. And he said, we got an afternoon broadcast. He says, why don't you come with me to the ballpark? Wow. I said, wow, that's great. So he takes me to the game. We go up in the broadcast booth, and I listen to him, and I'm watching him do the game, and I'm making notes and all that sort of thing, how he does this thing. And incredibly, in the fourth inning, he says to his audience on the radio, this is a radio broadcast, he says, I got a young man here from Chicago who now lives in Southern California who wants to get into sportscasting. So let's see what he's got. Joe, do the fourth inning. Oh, my God.
It's kind of like the Jimmy Pearsall fifth inning. Remember that?
Yeah, it blew me away.
Wow.
And there I did the fourth inning. And when it was over, he had a big smile on his face. He says, you did a good job. He said, keep in touch. And so we did. And eventually he was a factor in my career.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I mentioned Jimmy Pearsall. But Jimmy Pearsall
was the White Sox guy.
I know, the White Sox. Yeah. And then he would come out and do the A's too. Remember, they used to have.
That's right. You're right. Yes, he did.
The Jimmy Pearsall fifth inning.
Yeah. In fact, he even used another Chicago guy for 1 year. I think Red Rush might have done the A's for 1 year.
So, the hot corner.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Red Rush he did the A's, I believe, in 1990 with 1980 with Curt Flood.
I don't remember that.
No, I do. No, he did.
But Red. I knew Red not personally, but remember he was the voice of Loyola.
Right.
When we won the national championship. So I'm a student then.
Wow.
And he's our hero because he's calling our championship team. So I got to know him quite well. We became pals. Yeah. In fact, later on in my career, when I was doing Cal basketball, I actually would have him join me in the broadcast booth occasionally and let him call.
He was a complete character. And I may add, he did the A's, and that was when you were doing broadcasts. You were doing Cal, and then you also started doing sports reports at KGO Radio, which was the flagship, right? Yeah. And I think, and I'm not saying this because you're here, I'm very open, and I've told you this in the past years, I said, Joe Starkey's sports reports were some of the best written on the air that I've ever heard. I listened to some stations, but I told you that, and you took a lot of pride in doing those sports reports.
Absolutely.
And you made them very concise, and they were interesting, and you weren't. And
I'm sure you're Joe. Personal, not just 4-2 and 6-5 scores. More about the personalities involved in other issues and all that. So. I actually enjoyed that role. I prefer play-by-play.
It was evident.
Enjoyed the rest.
It was evident in the broadcast, and I remember the whole thing. I mean, people used to talk about, I know you know this guy, Jim Healy, down in L.A., which I never got into. I know it was a shticky kind of. Jim Healy was for those of you who don't know Jim.
Well, he wanted to stir things up.
Yeah, a little bit with the sound effects. I didn't get that. I didn't care for that. Right. But I know it was very, very similar to Sterling in New York with the crazy stuff. But I liked it more compact and all that. It was just a personal style. Anyway, so you began doing sports reports on KGO. And I remember, and I know you'll know this, I want to hear the story. A signature moment in your career was February 24th. I sound like Phil Donahue right now. February 24th. Mr. Starkey is live. Dateline, Lake Placid. You, my friend, were on the air on a certain date that will forever be remembered in Bay Area national history, international history. You're at Lake Placid. Yep. The summer games, the winter games. Yeah. The United States is about to play and inevitably win against the Soviet Union, as they were known. The hockey team, they went to you. Did the KGO news?
Oh, no, I went to them.
Well, you went to them.
The story is that
yes, tell us.
I had gone to KGO to become their sports director in the summer of '79.
No, I remember it very well.
I had first done the Seals. They went out of business, all right? Then I did the Colorado Rockies. After the Seals went out of business, Colorado Rockies were an NHL team that was created. And so I did their games for 3 years. But then, because they were clearly not going to make it in Colorado, and the team that followed, the Avalanche, has been fantastic. They won Stanley Cup, but that team was not very good. They ended up becoming the New Jersey Devils. So I could see the end, and so I decided I needed to get back to the Bay Area. So I go back. Thank God, KGO was nice enough to hire me as sports director. That meant I did Cal football, Cal basketball. And I had an opportunity then, because ABC in those days had all the Olympic rights, radio and television.
Of course.
They sent me to 3 consecutive Olympics, and one was perfect for me, 1980, Lake Placid. I'd just come out of the NHL, where I'd worked for 7 years. So I knew the players, knew everything about it. The assistant coach of the USA team was actually a former SEAL, so Craig Patrick. So I had a connection there. And so I would kind of gravitate during the Olympics at Lake Placid toward the hockey games. And when they played the Russians in that famous night on a Friday night, there was no live television.
No.
And at 4:00 in the afternoon, we're in the third period, and the USA team has just scored to take the lead with about 11 minutes to go in the game. And I got on the telephone. I'm sitting behind Al Michaels. I get on the phone and I called KGO and I said, look, feel free to fire me.
Yes,
I said that. I said, fire me if this doesn't work. But I said, you need to right now
go
put me live on the air, up and down every ABC station you can get on our network.
The hell with Johnny Holiday, right?
Yeah, everything on the West Coast you can get. Put me on live because we have something happening here that is going to be unforgettable. Yeah. And so I took over for the last 11 minutes of the game, called the last moments of the hockey game. And up there with the play, it's they're almost dead even in how big a deal they were for my career, for those two plays.
This became it. But did you know at the moment? I mean, you knew, but what was the adrenaline like? You must have been in
I was off the charts.
And you were on a rotary phone. This is before cell phone.
Telephone. Yeah, it was a telephone broadcast.
How did you get a line? How did you get through?
Well, that wasn't so hard because you
had a
sort of a semi-press box,
right,
so it was a landline. So that was easy enough to do. And I'm sitting about one row behind Al, and so I just pick up the phone and say, "I'm telling you, stop the news, put me on." And of course, another factor was that game was not a live broadcast.
No, it was
so it was tape delay. So if you heard me on the West Coast, you were hours ahead of anybody else hearing that broadcast.
Well, I heard you. I remember where I was. And I'm like, oh, my God. And that was the game which people often forget.
That wasn't the finish either.
They had to play the following Sunday to win the gold medal, right? But it was still that in and of itself. Yeah. And that was the era when we had the relations with Russia was not very well. We wouldn't go to Moscow for the Olympics, correct? And that was just, and what was it like sitting next to Al Michaels?
Well, I knew Al a little bit, not very well, but he at that time, remember, he was working for the Giants.
Yeah.
So we had a little connection where here's, I'm this sort of little amateur guy who's just doing the fringe sports, but I got to know him a little bit, and we had the best pal of both of us was Lee Groska. Yeah, he was Al's best friend. He was my best friend, so we had connections there, and so. But that
used to mention Lee Groska on every Monday Night Football game. There was a Lee Groska mention.
He'd always got a plug in somewhere.
Yeah, and Lee Groska was a broadcaster, former football player, and Joe, to your credit, got Lee involved later on in his broadcast life. Yeah. But that was one of the funniest things that I would always wait for the mention.
Yeah, and he would.
What was that?
Lee loved to do Howard Cosell. He'd do a fake Howard Cosell, and so it was a great
when time. You got back to San Francisco, did the boss say, "Hey, Starkey"? I mean, I want to know what happened. Did they?
I think they. Peoria certainly wasn't a hockey town then.
No,
but nonetheless, they knew this was special. And so they were, I think they were pretty proud of the fact that I did what I did.
Yeah,
Mickey Luckoff was my boss and was my entire time there.
Yeah. There was the KGO and ABC.
So sometimes you're in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, I would say so. You were Did you guys understand later on how big that was? I mean, it was big, but I mean, you did. No, what about Al
Not right then, but as time went on, he began to realize
that made his career
live for a while.
Did that made it established?
It made his career too.
Oh, you think?
Not that Al wasn't already successful.
No, I know.
But that put him in a different level.
Right. Something to where we still here today. You are obviously, that was significant in your broadcast career. But then, so you're doing Cal football. which, roller coaster of emotions. We had people who understood, it was kind of an enigma, very much a part of Bay Area culture and history and all that, but nothing could equate to what took place in 1982, November. I was there sitting next to a Bay Area broadcaster. Me and the other press people were on an elevator trying to go down.
Of course.
Joe was involved with probably the greatest singular play in, I believe, this, the play. And I mean, a million times, I know you've been asked this, we'll make it 1,000,001. How did that affect your life?
Well, immediately afterwards, when a neighbor had scheduled a party. The game was played not too late in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
So we were going to a party at night. And when I got to his house, we put on the television, and suddenly everybody is showing this play. And I'm already shaken by it because I'm scared to death that I've screwed it up. I mean, I immediately was aware of how big a deal it was. And so part two is, did I do it right? Because if I didn't do it right, nobody would have the definitive broadcast, because Stanford wasn't going to love it. And the TV broadcast, basically, along with the Stanford broadcast, there was a local television broadcast. Both those guys decided that it wasn't going to work while it was happening, which to me is a huge broadcast mistake. In other words, as the play was unfolding, they would say, no, there are flags on the field. This isn't going to count. This is what happened. My attitude has been, from the day I started as a kid trying to do this, call the play and apologize afterwards. Okay? But as the play unfolds, treat it as if it's the real deal. And they didn't. They treated it immediately as this is a joke and will not count. So that
the Stanford,
their broadcast.
Right.
My version is the only one that just took it from start to finish, that it actually counted. And if I would have had to say later, well, they're not going to count it, fine. But don't interrupt me in the middle of it and say, this is a joke, it isn't going to work.
Well, when it took place, did you understand, doing it in real time, how insanely bizarre that it was? Forget for the fact whether it would count or not, that you're calling this and you know what's going on.
But I also didn't believe that it would extend the way it did. I really thought at the time that it was strictly a Bay Area phenomenon. It would be a big deal with the locals, Cal and Stanford fans, things like that. And I didn't realize, well, for one thing, one of the reasons that it didn't for a while is that that's pre-ESPN.
Oh, yeah.
That's all. There's no satellite television, all those things. There's none of that. So at that point, it's a regional event more than anything else. And it had to build up as time went on, as the networks and all the different ways that you get feeds nowadays on television began to see what it was. At the beginning, it was, in fact, at first, what happened is we got some calls from people who thought, could they get a cassette tape of the call?
Right.
And what happened was I thought it would be a very local thing, Cal Stanford fans.
Mm-hmm.
So what I told Mickey Luckoff, which turned out to be very good for me as well, is I went to Mickey Luckoff, the station manager, said, Mickey, look, people keep calling up. They want a copy of this, the cassette. I said, because of the union thing and all that,
right.
I said, would you give me I would like the rights to this, just so I can actually create cassettes and give them to people without the hassle of dealing with the unions and all that. And he said, give me $1. So I gave him $1 for the rights. And I honestly, in my heart of hearts, had no idea there would ever be anything beyond a Bay Area deal.
Yeah.
And obviously at this point, said just recently, I just came back from the Atlanta College Football Hall of Fame, where you can actually go into a booth, push a button and hear the play and watch it on television with my voice. Then you push the button again and they'll put the words up for you and you do it in your voice, and you can have your own copy of calling the play. But that's how big a deal it is.
What did you make
in the
of
College
that?
Football Hall of Fame?
You don't have any obligations. What did you make?
I'm sorry?
What did you make of that? I'm just curious.
Not much. No,
really?
It was never a money-oriented
thing.
I
know you
no,
did.
In fact, most of the money that I've ever made on it, because it was put in commercials. Otherwise, I never asked for the.
But if ESPN plays that or whatever, you don't get anything at all. People ask me that all the time. When I was in broadcasting, hey, what did Starkey make? I said, I don't think he made a lot, but But
In
some
fact, I
people
made more money in one shot when they ran it at a Super Bowl 2 years ago
yeah,
as part of a Bayer aspirin commercial
right.
than I'd made total of all the years before.
Was that on
because
purpose when you didn't?
because they had to pay me network fees once they run it in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that was the Bear, which you told me this story, which I'm going to ask
Yeah.
you to tell in a little while. But you was that on purpose that you didn't have, like, I don't know if you call it a copyright, but you didn't own
Well,
the
I could.
rights
I
to
had.
that?
I basically have the. I could have completely copyrighted it, but I wanted the school to be able to do whatever they wanted with it. Number one, and number two is because I am SAG-AFTRA.
Right.
Anybody that does run it has to pay me anyhow.
Right.
So I was never overly worried about the rights.
So you didn't get like a little Starkey slush fund.
No, really, outside of doing commercial work, and some people said.
But the Bear thing
That's
is funny. It's a great story. You got a significant amount of
Oh yeah.
moolah and all that, but not as much as the.
No, I think probably people think I make more than I am, but because you can rerun it. But when it's on a regular outlet, ABC was the outlet. We were ABC then, and so
Right,
ABC
that's
can run
right.
it anytime they want. They can do it on ESPN, whatever. They have co-rights, as it were.
And and of course your partner at the time was Jan Hutchins,
Yeah.
who was a Bay Area TV sports anchor out
Right.
of Channel
Channel
5,
yeah.
KPIX. And then have you ever
No, in fact, I'm very sorry I've lost track of him because he moved out of the Bay Area, and actually, ironically, I knew him before the Bay Area. He was the TV sports guy on KDKA in Pittsburgh,
right,
when I was doing hockey for the Penguins, so we knew each other a little bit. But he was my partner, and for whatever reason, I think he intentionally dropped out of the broadcast business, and where he went, I have no idea.
He had a famous line at the end of his sportscast when he was at KPIX Channel 5, and he used to say, "The body is the temple of the spirit." He was a very...
I do remember that.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Remember that? And he also was
Good
in
guy.
the era when we had, you remember Eddie Alexander?
Of course.
Good luck, everybody. He was at Cron.
Yeah.
But I just remember that your play-by-play, and by the way, in doing somewhat research for this interview, I've asked a few people about, we just had the 46th year anniversary of, they called it the Holy Roller, which I hate.
Oh,
I like the Immaculate Deception.
Yeah.
On September 10th of 1978 was the very famous Raiders-Chargers game down in San Diego, when we had the ball was scooped into the end zone by Dave Casper, who I know it was actually Pete Banaszak, Dave Casper. They called it the Holy Roller. And it was a nutty play. And you listen to the play-by-play of that, which almost was sort of stylistically like your crazy play. Nothing near it, but close. Anyway, I remember somebody asking Bill King about that call. He says, "Oh, I hated it. I lost command. I didn't do anything. I didn't know." It was so nutty. And I think,
I think I disagree with him. I think
I thought it was really
perfect.
Hey, Madden, get your big butt. Remember that?
Absolutely.
And I thought, and I'm not saying this because you're here. I listened to that again. And under the circumstances, the description was perfect because it was so nutty,
Exactly.
so crazy. How the hell could you have called it? I don't care whether you're Red Barber or John Madden, whatever. So again, not saying it because you're here. I thought it was perfect because it let everybody understand exactly to a T. Yeah. Because it was so nutty. You had the band, which they were. Had that happened at Stanford, would that have counted?
Oh, a good point.
Well, I'm asking you.
I would like to think so, but you never know. But the officials, I give them credit because the pressure to get that call right was incredible.
Did you meet any of the participants later on, like the Harmon, the kicker for Stanford, or one of the five? One of them was actually in jail. I don't think.
There was a play that occurred before the laterals.
Yes.
Where there's a guy named Mike Dotterer, who played for Stanford.
Right.
And to this day, we are friends. Wow. Okay, we are pals.
And he, I believe, was in banking too, right?
I don't know. He's had his own business.
I remember
but anyhow,
go ahead.
I constantly tease him about the fact, Mike, if you cut to the left instead of the right on that play with only 2 minutes to go, you'll probably get a touchdown. And therefore, no matter what Cal does, it won't be enough to win the game. So I said, I want to thank you for turning inside that allowed Cal to tackle you instead of my call. And I tease him with that all the time.
I thought he was going to call you a son of a bitch, like
No,
Charlie Finley did.
Yeah, but we've had a great relationship and been pals for years.
Do you ever
and Elway?
Elway, I was going to ask you.
Elway pouted about it, wouldn't talk about it for years. And I can't blame him. He said he'd never been to a bowl game. This was his shot, and so it looked like it was done. And instead, his time's up.
That was his last ever college football.
That's right.
And he had an amazing drive, the last drive,
right? Yeah.
4th and 17, right?
Absolutely. Look what he did.
And everything. And you know, you believe that?
So that's
42 years ago. Is that scary?
Very. Yeah.
I mean, literally.
Of course.
42.
Who would believe it?
Half a century.
That it would live this long.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, as I said before, when it first happened, this will be around for a while, and then it'll go on. And but it's taken on a life of itself. It's constantly voted the number one play in college football history, and so it was fun to be part of it.
You had a story about Mike Daughter, and I have a friend of mine who was the son of the photographer who took that very last image of the guy that went into the
Kevin Moan.
Yeah, it was a photographer for the Oakland Trib named Robert Stinnett.
I know the name. Yeah,
and his son was a friend. I haven't seen him in years, but he's still alive. But that was the photo. That was, you actually see the band and all that.
Right.
When you think about, and you retired a couple of years ago, you'd had it enough, but was it just I'm curious as to what prompted you to just quit at that time. Was it just enough? Or were you ready to be retired? What motivated you?
I just felt that there was coming a point that I wasn't as sharp as I used to be, and the memory was harder to memorize and all that kind of thing. And it's ironic how things had. I haven't talked about this very often, but it turned out that I left at just the right time, because in the following February, I had a massive heart problem.
Wow.
I had open heart surgery, and the open heart surgery, had that occurred, if I was still working, it does affect your life, and I would never have been able to do the travel and all the things I was able to do then. So I left at the right time, coincidentally rather than intentionally, that I know such a thing would happen. But after my surgery, there's no question my energy level, my ability to memorize as well, that's all diminished. So I got out at the right time.
You did the 49ers that was when KGO took over. And then you did a lot of broadcasts where you literally had to get on an airplane after a Cal game and go do the 49ers. Yep. Was that anything about that took a toll on your personal life at all?
Not really. I think, certainly you could make the case that it's tough on the wife and kids just because you're gone so much. And if you're doing two teams, you're spending the entire week memorizing numbers and names and a lot of homework. So there is a factor there. There's no doubt about that. But from a physical standpoint, I didn't find it particularly difficult. In the years I did the two of them, I thought that I was capable to handle it. What has happened, though, is that I'm amazed anybody can do it anymore, because there are only a couple of guys now still doing Saturday and Sunday, because of the fact that you never know what time the games are being played anymore.
Yeah, it
used to be,
right.
If I knew for sure that the worst that would happen is that Cal would play at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and I could still get an all-night plane. Now they don't tell you till a week in advance. By the way, the game might be at 7:30. Things like that, which would have made it utterly impossible to do both teams.
George Devine Jr., he's a Bay Area play-by-play guy. He's a well-known guy, good guy. He told me, and I didn't know this, you entered the seminary.
Yeah. Well,
I don't think a lot of people know about that. I'm just curious. What was that like?
Well, I grew up as a South Side Chicago Irish Catholic, and it wasn't unusual in the 50s that the church was a big part of our lives as Catholics. We were all Notre Dame fans, and it was not unusual for kids in that genre to go into a seminary at high school age. Although, as I grew older, I thought, you know what, that was a terrible idea. Should never put 14-year-old kids and tell them, this is, you should start. You should be, first of all, once you do that, for example, the high school I went to, called Quigley High School in Chicago, no longer operates as a seminary high school. School was on Saturday and Thursday was off. So they were doing everything they could to isolate you from the regular population, right? Now, as an Irish Catholic on the South Side, I want to see Notre Dame football. You got to tell me I got to go to school on Saturday afternoon, things like that. So it was a different world then. The Thursday off, you weren't supposed to date because God help you if you get a girlfriend, you're not going to ever be a priest.
Might be at
odds. And so I thought it was a mistake. And they have changed all the rules since then, thank goodness. But I grew up in a great neighborhood, south side of Chicago. Irish, Italian, Polish were the dominant groups, and we all sports addicts. We all love all our teams: the Cubs, the White Sox, the Blackhawks, the Bears. Couldn't get enough of that.
That whole gestalt, the Irish, the Notre Dame. What they describe that is, it's beyond passion, right?
Well, it was part of it. For example, one of the coaches from head coach of Notre Dame, Terry Brennan, had actually coached at the local high school on the south side of Chicago. And next thing you know, now he's coaching Notre Dame. So we had an immediate affinity for him. And everything about sports in Chicago was a big deal to us. It was a great town to grow up in, and it was a great neighborhood. And but I did end up obviously moving to California and changing my whole profession.
You were, somebody said that you're a devout Catholic. Or devout.
Well, the devout thing kind of gets overstated. Do I go to mass every week? Yes. And do I follow the rules? Yes. Am I a Christian? Yes. But that's about it.
You never made it a part of your professional life.
I never. The idea of becoming a priest, I quit after high school and moved on to Loyola of Chicago, and I just didn't think it was the right direction for me. Now, many of my friends did. A lot of the guys I went into the seminary with, but we were all just 14 years of age. 6 of us went in together from the same high school, from the same grammar school, and 2 of us got there all the way.
I wouldn't be a journalist, which I'm not, if I didn't ask you. So this whole Catholic thing, one quick 30 seconds or 5 seconds, whatever you want to say. Any effect on your whole life in terms of, I mean, as a Catholic who's had to endure all these stories.
From a moral standpoint, I think any Christian religion, you should follow, if you follow the rules of whether the Catholic or Lutheran or Methodist or whatever, if you follow those basic edicts, that's the way I think you should live your life. That's all.
Okay. You had to endure a personal situation that was pretty tough. And I wasn't even a part of it, and that has to do with your wife. Your wife was diagnosed with breast cancer, and there was an article about it and all that. And you were, thank God, she appears to be okay. But how did you deal with that? I mean, I know you weren't directly.
Well, I think anybody who has faced cancer in their family knows that it is incredibly traumatic, not only for the victim, but also for the family around it. Is the person going to survive? How serious is it? How long is the treatment going to be? All those things just jump out at you. And so, as we know in this world, they have made great progress in solving cancer issues, but there are some people that don't survive. I've had friends die very young that broke my heart that they died so young because of cancer or maybe some other disease. But anybody who has a cancer in their family, they know what I'm talking about. They know what the impact it has emotionally.
She's doing okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you've been together a while and all that. Anything as we close, anything that people should know about Joe Starkey that they don't know, that maybe not that you have to mention and you're an ego, which you don't, but anything story, something about you that maybe never, I know you've done interviews before, but that hasn't got out, that maybe an interesting tidbit that we should know?
I tell a story when I wrap up. And in fact, as recently as I just went on the Auburn trip with Cal, I told the story to all the people traveling with the Cal group on Friday night to the Hall of Fame. I said, I have a Rolling Stone story that drives everybody crazy. They can't stop laughing. We said this summer we did go to Rome, and my wife and we took a tour of the Adriatic, or not the Adriatic,
Roman Colosseum.
Just roaming through the rivers and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyhow, a long time ago, when my youngest son, I have 3 boys, was about 10 years old, we took a trip to Rome and Greece. And so we finished the trip, was go through Italy, come up southern Italy, get up to Rome, hot August day, and it's a warm afternoon, and we get in midday, and my wife and son are tired, and I am too, and they say, we want to go take a nap. I said, no. I said, what I need is the swimming pool. It's hot and muggy. I'm going to go to the swimming pool. So I go downstairs to the swimming pool, pull out a book, just sort of sit there and before I go in the water. And incredibly, the entire Rolling Stones band,
You're kidding me,
and their wives joined me at the swimming pool. Okay. So everybody's
I thought you
there.
were going to tell me that Charlie Finley showed up and called you a son of a bitch.
Yeah, we're in the hospital. We're in the hotel and we're in the pool. And Charlie Watts, their drummer, sits down next to me.
Oh, very well.
And I know him right away. And we start talking to each other. And he's telling me they're here for a tour. They're going to do a performance in Rome the next night. They're just hanging out till then. And so he says, mate, he says, it's really hot here, isn't it? He says, you want to go in the pool? I said, God, son, what a great idea. So he and I go in the pool. And all we're doing is standing in the shallow end of the pool, just kind of cooling off. And I'm asking him about their tour and all that kind of thing, right?
Right.
And so as we're doing this, another guy jumps in the pool and waves to Charlie, who I don't know. And the guy lines up here, and I've got Charlie on my right, and I'm in the middle. And the guy that has jumped in the pool, if you're certain age, you're going to know him. Lou Ferrigno was the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
All right?
ABC.
Right. So I now have the Incredible Hulk on my left. I have the drummer of the Rolling Stones on my right.
Yeah.
And I'm in the middle. And we're looking at the other, just talking and chatting. They're telling me stories, and I'm eating it all up.
Wow.
The guy at the other end of the pool dives in and starts swimming toward us. And Charlie says, oh God, he said, you just, wouldn't it be nice if you didn't get bothered by fans all the time? It's clearly the guy wants to talk,
No.
So the guy swims up to the 3 of us, looks us all over and says, aren't you the Cal football announcer?
Get out of here. So it was just,
I had no idea who they were.
I thought you were going to tell me it's Jagger.
Announcer in a pool in Rome, Italy. One of my favorite stories.
What was it, Dotterer?
No.
And it wasn't Mick Jagger?
No, just a guy. In fact, I never even got the guy's name, which breaks my heart that I don't know.
This is a quick story about Jagger, though, which people don't know. You probably know this. Mick Jagger went to the London School of Economics.
Oh, he's no dummy. Absolutely.
Do you know Joe Starkey? And I'm telling you this, I don't mean to invade the interview with you, but I have to tell this real quick. Every time they play a show, whether it's the LA Coliseum, Candlestick, no longer Candlestick, he does their books. Not
whoa, that's impressive.
Mick Jagger
is no idea.
Literally the money man.
No.
Yeah, look that up. Smart man. Does all their money. Pays up.
Even now he performs like he's 40.
Can you believe that?
Hardly.
Yeah, that's a great story. When was this?
Oh, this is a long time ago, in the late 80s.
Yeah, because unfortunately we lost Charlie Watt recently, the great drummer, and it's not the same. But we still have Keith Richards, who looks like he's in
fact, I don't know why he didn't die 10 years ago. His lifestyle.
He looks like an iguana now.
Yeah.
But in any event, Joe, I mean, I'm thrilled that you're able to come here, and I know you've done maybe a million, but it is so great to have you here. And I've known you for years and years and years, and I didn't know you that well, but I'm really, really happy that you were able to do a live interview.
Delighted to do it.
Yeah, and happy. And sorry about your preamble getting here, but in any event, really, really. Anything on the horizon publicly, or are you just enjoying retirement?
No, I follow Cal. I have great affection for the people there. They've been so nice to me for so many years. I mean, I'm in their Hall of Fame. They've got quotes all over the building about the play. Why would I not love Cal? I just breaks my heart that the Pac-12 dissolved in such a horrible way. It never should have happened. It was inept by too many people, just screwed up badly. And so we'll just have to see how it plays out as time goes on. That's all.
It's a shame that they never made it to the Rose Bowl.
I did 3 Super Bowls, but never got a Rose Bowl, and that's too bad.
I appreciate you coming here. I appreciate you people seeing another side of you and reacquainting themselves with in my book, one of the greatest Bay Area sports and for that matter, overall broadcasters. I'm really pleased to
my pleasure.
Thanks for coming by.
Okay,
folks, appreciate that. I hope you enjoyed the interview and become a subscriber. We've got more interviews coming, and thanks for watching, and we'll see you later. All right.
Okay, how do I get a copy of this?
It's